Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode of the month. This is the show where at the end of every month or beginning of every month, depending on the day this drops, I look back at the month that was and pick my favorite episode of television to come out that month. I knew from the beginning of this month we would be talking about Atlanta. I don't know what capacity it was going to be till the end of the month, but I knew it was coming. So, for April of 2022, we're talking about an episode of Atlanta, and I don't get very political on this channel, and I don't want to, but I do want to just kind of like state off the beginning of this video that there are things I'm going to talk about that are going to be controversial. And I'm not going to really say an opinion on it because honestly, I think there is stuff to be said about both sides of this idea. I just think we should brace for that before we get into this. So if you have a strong opinion on this either way, for better or ill, I don't need to hear it in the comments. You don't need to say it. I'm just here to talk about an episode of television. Sometimes television can make a political statement. You know, when we talked about Pam and Tommy, I said Pam will deserve better. And that might be a controversial statement, but it's true. Same with this episode, which is Season 3, Episode 4, The Big Payback. There is a lot to dive into here. This episode is essentially about this idea that has been discussed in the real world, and I'm sure is in effect in certain ways across America and other places. Basically, we're following this man played by Justin Bartha, and he is living his everyday life. And then suddenly these restitution ideas are being thrown around the world, and all of these people of a certain heritage are suddenly being paid restitution for their ancestors being owned as slaves for these white people. And you see this man he's white, and suddenly this woman shows up on his lawn, comes into his house, starts live tweeting and live streaming the events of attacking this man, not physically, but just like asserting herself into his life and how that affects him and how that affects everything about him. This is a very fascinating concept, and one of the things in particular this season of Atlanta has been focusing on is it's kind of like anthology idea of its stories, and there's something really impressive about that. And this one in particular sees none of our usual cast members appear, which is a very fascinating thing to see for this show, and I do like that. It is just a really interesting perspective, and maybe because I am a white guy who grew up in a certain middle class stature, I see what's happening in here and I'm fascinated by it. I am not really for or against this idea. I just think it's fascinating to see this is how people are talking, and this is like an idea being thrown around. But you just see like how quickly these things can affect somebody's life with them realistically not being involved in the idea of it whatsoever. It's just a really fascinating idea that they're playing here. And this season in particular, when I do my big video talking about Atlanta, I'm going to talk about this. This season in particular, they are really focusing on this idea that white people don't get it. And I think that's an interesting concept to play with, because maybe they don't. Maybe because I am Caucasian of a certain class, I don't really understand what's being said here. But I just think it's just so fascinating and kind of terrifying in a certain way that at any moment somebody could show up in your life and demand you give them all of this money, and not in like a physical harm, like rob you way, just like, I deserve better from you. Your ancestors were bad people. I deserve this from you for my ancestors. And I think that is such a it's just, there's something about that is terrifying, that is just creepy, but understandable in a weird way. And you see as this man is affected, like he's in like a custody thing of his wife. He loses custody of his daughter. He can't see his daughter, and they're like, whoa. He gets let go from his job. You see the way it's affecting other people in his job, where some of them are just like, you have to wear this short shirt like that says my family owned slaves or something. it is like kind of it's just terrifying in that way, just like how quickly it could fall down and you have nothing left to give. And there's two moments in particular that really just like stood out to me about this episode. The first one was like kind of in the middle when our lead guy, who's Marshall, he's kind of like staying at this hotel trying just to get away because he can't go home because this woman brought her family to his house and he can't go home to deal with it. And he's talking to this man in the hotel room and it's just kind of like, you know, this is just reality for, he says them, depicting the African American people that they're talking to. So I'm just going to say that in the context of here, the them that he's talking about is the African American people. He's like, for them, this is just life. This isn't like history. This is things that have happened, are still happening. And there's just something about that I guess it just stuck with me because I don't really know how to say it. There's just something about that idea that is saying there that I'm like, okay, that is a perspective I haven't really considered because, again, that is not something I am accustomed to. But now that you hear that, it's like, these are things that should be in the conversation, that should be talked about. I am all for talking about history, for better or ill, because you have to learn from those mistakes and not repeat them. So if this is what it has to do to get the conversation out there of like the mistakes we've made before, absolutely. And then immediately after he talks to Marshall, this guy goes out to the pool and shoots himself in the head and kills himself. And you're like, whoa, okay, that is pretty dark. That is harsh. That is just tragic because he has nothing left. He can't give anything else to this world, so he's done. That just stuck out to me as like a really intense moment. And then I said this on Twitter when the episode came out. The final shot of that episode is so powerful and is such a statement that the creators are making. You go to this restaurant and all of the wait staff and servers are white. And everybody sitting in the booths or at the tables, you know, paying to be there are black people. And that is such a statement. It's very, very intense. And I think for a good reason. It's just, this is the reality that this world is setting up, that these people are getting what they deserve. It's payback. It's the big payback like they were talking about throughout the episode. They're getting their money for what happened to their family, their people, and now they're living in that world. And then the rest of us, the Caucasians, we are dealing with that. And this is what we have to do that. And I just think panning away, just like pulling away as we are seeing the shot of that restaurant is such a powerful statement. And I think it's so, so cool to see. Atlanta has just surprised me so much this season. I have loved every other season and every episode, but this season in particular, it's just doing something so creative that feels a little bit different than the other ones. And this episode in particular just struck a chord with me where I'm like, wow, you're really using your platform to pitch an idea, to talk about an idea and do something with it that's kind of terrifying but realistic. And that's kind of crazy. Now, I heard Donald Glover say there was an episode that he wanted Ryan Gosling to star in. I think it was this one. This show was just great. And this episode just struck a chord with me, and I think it's the best episode of the month. So it is my episode of the month. That is Atlanta Season 3, Episode 4. Now, thank you guys for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.